Their grandfather, Elio, developed Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Their father, Horian, created the UFC. And their uncle, Royce, is a UFC legend. They are Henner and Ryron Gracie. This next generation of Gracies is about to school you in the art of Gracie Jiu Jitsu, made famous in the UFC.
He's got a guillotine! He's gonna finish this, John! It's all over!
This is UFC 101, Gracie Jiu Jitsu.
Welcome to UFC 101, Gracie Jiu Jitsu. In 1993, our father created the UFC to showcase the effectiveness of Jiu Jitsu to the world.
And he specifically chose our Uncle Royce to represent Jiu Jitsu because of his small stature.
Knowing all too well that it would be the perfect testament as to the effectiveness of the Gracie way.
By employing the leverage-based techniques of Jiu Jitsu, Royce proved once and for all that leverage and technique can overcome brute strength.
In Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, we aim to win the fight in a series of phases. Close the distance, execute the takedown, achieve the dominant position, and then finish the fight. We're gonna teach you guys the core principles, positions, and techniques of this incredible martial art.
To begin, we must cover the 4 primary ground fighting positions.
Starting with the secret weapon of Gracie Jiu Jitsu, the guard. The bottom person has their legs crossed around the waist of the top person, okay? The secret weapon of Gracie Jiu Jitsu for this person. You don't explain why.
First of all, from the bottom of the fight, I can stay close and be safe from any strikes that he has to throw at me. Second is that you can win from underneath. From your back, I can spin for a submission, securing the wrist, an arm bar right here, or who knows, maybe even sweeping a reverse, which would put me on top of him in the mounted position.
As the top person here, the #1 objective is to neutralize sweeps and submissions of the bottom person. And you do that by controlling their hips. The more effectively I can keep Ryron's hips aligned with mine, the better. Every time he creates angles of 90 degrees, I'm in risk for the different submissions. So I want him to stay trapped with the hip. You can use your elbows and your knees to pinch their hips. Secondly, you can use strikes to open the guard, distract, or maybe even knock them out. But if that doesn't work, the ultimate goal from the guard is to pass. After opening their guard, you want to clear their leg, and eventually you want to slide through their legs and get past to the side mount. The side mount, also known as side control, is the most dominant position in the fight, simply because I'm teed up, I'm perpendicular to Ryron's body, and I'm very difficult to tip over, kind of like an outrigger on a canoe. By it being posted out, you're not flipping it. So from here, my main objective is control, strikes, or submissions.
And for me, it's to control the distance also. I want to stay close so he cannot strike, he cannot submit. And when he gives me a little bit of space, I will move and recover the full guard.
On top, my #1 priority, even more so than striking or submitting him, is preventing the recomposure of the full guard, because that would mean I take a step back in the progress of the fight. So if I'm successful at preventing Ryron's guard, what I want to do is maybe use a strike or two to distract him, elbow strike, forearm, shoulder punch right here, and then go to my knees. Preferably get this knee under his armpit, and then bring the other knee here and slide it across his waist. Boom, dropping me right off in the full mount. One of the best places to be in a real fight. If there's any place you don't want to end up, it's where he is right now. He can't punch me, but I can punch him. And if I connect, his head bounces off the cement. Very bad place to be.
If you do end up here, you better know some jiu-jitsu. So you can stay close, stay safe from punches, or when the time is right, maybe trap an arm, roll my opponent off the top. Now I'm on top of the fight. Or the last option would be to work for an elbow escape right here and reestablish the guard position.
Which brings us to rule #1. If you have to be on the bottom of the fight, get the person inside your guard. Very important. Now, back to the mount. If you don't win the fight with strikes from here, there are a variety of submissions for you to choose from. But what is very common when the person on the bottom doesn't know jiu-jitsu is to pronate, to roll to their knees in an attempt to protect their face from the incoming elbows. Okay, so as he rolls, I modify my mount, I take his back, and now I'm in the back mount. And this, my friends, is where you want to be. If you were given the choice to select any position from where to control your opponent, choose this one. This is the back mount. My hooks are in Hidon's thighs here. My body is behind his, and the reason why this is so powerful, besides the submission opportunities that await me, is because Hidon's hands only go this way effectively. So he can't push, punch, or attack me because I'm not in front of him. Being behind him has its advantages.
With somebody on my back, the first thing I want to do is neutralize possible chokes. And by controlling this arm that will wrap my neck right here, it makes life difficult for Henner. And then I want to work to fall to one side and maybe defeat this hook right here, turn, and work my way on top. Because anywhere is better than having someone on your back.
10-4. If, in my position, you are successful at preventing the removal of the hooks, you do want to close the deal. That's the eventual goal. So what I do is I use like one hand to isolate and the other hand to shoot. And then from here we come up and we wrap and we finish the rear naked choke. If he's too clever for the shot of the rear naked choke with his hand fighting here, I want to underhook this arm, foot on the hip, work my triple threat, blade the neck, step over, slap the hand, and pop, pop, pop. You know how it goes.
Don't go anywhere, because when we come back, you'll learn the primary techniques of Gracie Jiu Jitsu that make this art effective against larger opponents.
And it's all over!
You're watching UFC 101, Gracie Jiu Jitsu.
Welcome back to UFC 101, Gracie Jiu Jitsu.
This self-defense system was specifically developed by our grandfather, Helio Gracie, to enable a smaller person to defeat a larger, more athletic opponent.
And the core principle that makes this possible is that of energy efficiency. This principle is best illustrated in our effective management of distance and our use of submissions as a means of victory. Our grandfather once told us, in a fight, whoever manages the distance manages the damage that can be done. Such an important lesson. Let us demonstrate. Normally, the way fights are fought is this. People stand there and they trade punches until someone gets cracked and down they go. There's one problem with this.
Anytime I stand within range to punch Henner, he can punch me.
Very bad. So our philosophy is simple. You want to be all the way out or all the way in. All the way out means at least 2 arm lengths away where he can't punch or kick me. And then eventually, when he becomes overly aggressive, I protect my face and I go in and I grab him in the clinch.
From here, I'm gonna wanna get away and I'm gonna strike him, and that's gonna burn a lot of energy on my part.
Not to mention that strikes from here, they're not that bad because I'm so close, he doesn't have the power and the pressure with the hip rotation to be effective with these strikes. So they're more depleting to Hidon than they are damaging to me. And that's a very important note to take. So by managing the distance, you're safe standing, and this same principle applies to the ground as well. When you land on the ground, chest to chest in a side mount situation, if this person doesn't know jiu-jitsu, what are they gonna do? Try to push me off or just sit up aimlessly? The problem is that leaves me in charge of the distance, so I can knock him out the way you see so commonly in random street fights on YouTube. Instead, here's what Hidon's gonna do.
Luckily, I know jiu-jitsu, so I'm gonna manage the distance, wear him out a little bit, and as he calms down and there's some space, I move, and now I put him inside my guard. The secret weapon of jiu-jitsu.
It's very simple, my friends. If you forget everything, remember this. In a fight, if you manage the distance,
You manage the damage.
in Gracie Jiu Jitsu, we aim to use leverage-based submissions to defeat our opponents once we've neutralized their attack and depleted their energy. And generally, submissions fall into 2 categories: chokeholds or joint locks. Chokes being the more popular.
And part of the reason why is that joint locks, you can let your arm tear and then keep fighting.
Like John Jones against Vitor Belfort. What a soldier.
When it comes to chokehold, like our grandfather always said, there are no tough guys. Everybody goes to sleep.
Let's demonstrate. Rear naked choke. The most popular by far of the chokeholds is the rear naked choke. And it's called rear naked simply because you're not using any of the gi or fabric. You wrap the neck, you're placing the V of your elbow under their neck plugging this artery, the carotid artery here and here, and this bilateral carotid artery pressure, once applied for 7 to 10 seconds, renders the person unconscious.
Unless they tap out.
Unless they tap out. And a good example of what happens when you don't tap out for a technique like this is when John Jones wrapped Lyoto Machida's neck
In the guillotine, standing up.
had him pinned against the cage, had full pressure for like 10, 15 seconds. The ref didn't even know Machida was out. And then Jones let go, and down he went. Joint locks. Incredible use of leverage with the simple objective being what? Hyperextend the joint beyond its normal range of motion to cause incredible discomfort. And if the person is not smart enough to tap, dislocation or fracture of the bones. Simple demonstration, catch me from the mount here.
Straight arm lock from the mount. 1. From here, I control his wrist, hold it down, and now I raise my hips up, hyperextending his elbow right here.
And a good example of when someone didn't tap was when Frank Mir caught Nogueira in the Kimura lock. Nogueira didn't want to tap because he never has tapped, but that day he paid for it.
Stay right there. When we return, Henner and Hiron go over their 3 favorite submissions in UFC history. You won't want to miss this.
Damn! Wow! Where did that come from? Oh, my goodness! Unbelievable!
Welcome back to UFC 101, Caique Jiu Jitsu.
With thousands of incredible fights to choose from, selecting our favorite UFC Jiu-Jitsu victories of all time wasn't easy.
But we did it.
We did it. Starting with number 3, the beautiful Kimura counter armbar by Matt Hughes on GSP at UFC 50. Round 1, 10 seconds left, and Matt Hughes is after it with that ground and pound until GSP sits up.
He sits up, wraps the tricep, grabs the wrist, and he goes for the Kimura right here, a submission of his own. But before he's able to apply pressure, Matt Hughes reverses it.
He clears his leg, he steps around, he stands up, and he sits with his hips beautifully glued to the shoulder, locking it, a perfect armbar finish. My friends, some people call Matt Hughes a wrestler. I call him a jiu-jitsu brother. For our second favorite UFC submission finish of all time, we went with jiu-jitsu expert Frank Mir's knee bar finish over Brock Lesnar in their electrifying bout at UFC 81. After some vicious ground and pound and a few failed submission attempts, Brock ends up inside Frank's open guard, standing up. And then Frank inserted a very sneaky inside knee hook.
Using this hook, he pulls himself this way, grabs the ankle, shooting his leg through, locking the triangle right here, securing Brock's leg to attack the heel hook, forcing Brock to the ground,
which was the perfect segue that Frank was looking for to spin into the knee bar right here.
By controlling the ankle and thrusting the hips forward, it hyperextends Brock's knee,
forcing Brock to tap out. Very wise, because if you don't tap, it snaps. For our first pick of favorite UFC Jiu-Jitsu finish of all time, you know we had to keep it real. Uncle Royce versus Dan Severn, UFC 4.
This was so amazing because it was the first triangle choke executed in the UFC. Royce finds himself on the bottom of the fight, surviving, allowing Dan to exhaust and burn energy. And then Royce slips his leg through here and over the neck to lock the triangle choke. From here, he squeezes. Dan taps out. Unbelievable victory.
What a performance by Gracie. On his back almost the entire match. His corner urging him on, and somehow he just hung in there.
And there's no doubt that this triangle choke was the one that put Gracie Jiu-Jitsu on the map as the only art that could guarantee a smaller, weaker person's chance against a larger, more athletic opponent. And because of that, it remains our #1 pick for favorite UFC Jiu-Jitsu finish of all time.
Severn grabbing the leg of Gracie.
Severn might be in trouble now. He choked him out. Unbelievable.
Up next, street self-defense applications.
Throw a punch, hugs my arm, and spins for an armbar.
And why Gracie Jiu Jitsu is for you.
Victory is breaking free and going home safely.
You're watching UFC 101, Gracie Jiu Jitsu.
Welcome back to UFC 101, Gracie Jiu Jitsu. It's fair to say that the success of Jiu Jitsu inside the octagon has forever changed the global landscape of martial arts.
But what most people don't know is that Jiu Jitsu has been adapted for men, women, and children of all ages.
Gracie Combatives is a specialized program that was developed for the U.S. Army in 1994 to prepare soldiers for hand-to-hand combat in as little time possible. It has since been modified for civilian use to give regular people the maximum street self-defense effectiveness in the absolute least amount of time possible. It's based on the most important 36 techniques of Gracie Jiu Jitsu. You don't get him in a headlock.
So this could start standing up. Maybe. Someone throws you on the ground, has you in a headlock, and they're squeezing because they have nothing except for your head. They're going to hold tight.
And if this person doesn't know Jiu Jitsu or what to do from here, they're going to try to bench press their opponent, try to push him off. But it's impossible because he has a death grip on his neck and Hidon is much heavier. So Brian's not going to get out. However, with Jiu Jitsu technique, he will hook the leg, hold the shoulder, and then push off his back foot to climb up on Hidon's back, at which point he can roll him over to the modified mount.
From here, Brian could throw a punch, forcing me to release the headlock, hugs my arm, and spins for an armbar.
Finishing the fight with full control of the opponent and, of course, the submission, which can give him the opportunity to do as much or as little damage as he wants. It's very simple. In a fight against a larger opponent, it's never going to be easy. But with a little bit of Gracie Jiu Jitsu, anything is possible. Gracie Bully Proof is our anti-bullying program for kids. It teaches verbal and physical self-defense techniques. Now, what makes this program so unique is that it's 100% non-violent. So much so that the techniques in this program have been deemed reasonable defense at many school districts across the U.S. Here today to help us demonstrate a few of these techniques are our bully-proof assistants, Haley and Rayanne.
So the scenario today is I grab the little sister, I'm the bully, I throw her on the ground, and now I'm on top, striking, throwing punches.
Freeze, very bad situation, okay? And in here, in the Gracie Bully Proof program, we aim not just to teach kids how to defend themselves, but how to help other kids in need in a situation of bullying. So Rayanne here, as the older sister on the outside, wants to help her sister. If she doesn't know what to do, she may try to step in and separate them, get punched or pushed in the process, and against a bigger bully, that won't work. So we need leverage, we need technique. So Rayanne using the super save technique. Go, Rayanne. She grabs the arm, she runs it around, she goes knee on stomach, she balances.
All right, okay.
Do you promise to leave us alone?
All right, I'll leave you alone.
Boom, perfect. As kids, we learned these techniques. We had a chance to not only save ourselves, but help other kids. And now we're trying to share it with the rest of the world. A confident child
is a bully-proof child.
Gracie Jiu Jitsu is the perfect self-defense system for women because it was specifically designed for smaller people against larger attackers. Now, in the Gracie Women Empowered program, we teach the ladies how to defend against the 15 most common threat scenarios, including everything from hair grabs and chokeholds to weapon-bearing assailants or rear attacks. Check it out. Let's do it. So Hidon is mounted.
The problem is this. The attacker achieves the mounted position, and he's strangling her. If she does nothing, she will be unconscious in 6 seconds. Now, the common reaction for the bottom person is to panic. Push, twist, and turn. Go ahead, push me. And I just maintain the position, but she burns all of her energy, and you cannot afford to waste all of your energy.
Yeah, panic certainly is your worst enemy in a situation like this, and for that, we have technique. And in this situation, we're gonna use the trap and roll technique. Roxanne uses one hand, she cross grips Hidon's wrist, and she nails it to her chest. She's using what's called a monkey grip on the wrist. On the other hand over here, she reaches up behind the tricep and grabs with a C-clamp on the back of the arm. Both hands trapping one of his arms, and then she traps the foot down below. That's where it really gets tricky. With the arm and leg both trapped on the same side, it's similar to if you had a table with 4 legs, and then you cut off 2 legs of the table. The table will fall in that direction. So because she has his arm and leg trapped, as Roxanne thrusts her hips up, Hidon will not be able to brace himself on the ground. So holding the arm tight, she bridges, go ahead. And because he can't brace himself, he falls, she jumps, and disengages. So there it is, my friends. Against a larger opponent for a woman in a self-defense situation, victory is not to beat the guy up to a pulp. Victory is breaking free and going home safely. And that is exactly what is covered in the Women Empowered program.